At the Gainbridge Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, the Indiana Fever hosted the Dallas Wings in a preseason matchup that had the entire basketball world buzzing. Because for the first time ever, the last 3 number 1 overall draft picks were sharing the same floor. Caitlin Clark, Paige Bueckers, and Aaliyah Boston, 3 consecutive first overall picks, all in the building, all in uniform, and all competing on the same night. You simply cannot manufacture that kind of storyline. And the fans in Indianapolis showed up in a massive way to watch it unfold. Clark was coming off her first preseason game against the Liberty last week. 7 points in 17 minutes. A little rusty from the field, but healthy, moving well, and clearly building towards something. Tonight was going to be a step up in competition and a chance to show a little more of what was coming. Bueckers on the other side was one of the most anticipated rookies in history last season. The number 1 pick out of UConn. Fresh off a national championship. Explosive, fearless, and already looking every bit like the franchise player the Wings drafted her to be. And Boston, the number 1 pick from this draft, was finally making her debut in the league after her time at UConn. So, let's get into it. Immediately, Boston picked up a foul on the opening possession and Cunningham stepped to the line, though she only converted 1 of 3. Bueckers answered with a 28-foot 3 off a Smith assist. And then Boston added a turnaround fadeaway to push Dallas to a 5-1 lead before Indiana had even settled in. But Clark woke the crowd up immediately. She drove the baseline for a layup to cut it. Then came back down, received the ball at the top of the key, and buried a 25-foot 3 off a Hines Allen assist to give Indiana the lead. The building was electric. She wasn't done. Clark poked the ball away from Smith on the very next Dallas possession, turned the steal into a running layup, and Indiana had gone from down 4 to up 3 in under a minute. This was Clark in full command. Not just scoring, but making the defensive plays that don't show up on the stat sheet, and energizing an entire arena in the process. Bueckers kept responding, though. She hit a layup off a Smith pass, and then found Segrist cutting for an easy bucket off her own steal. And the game stayed tight throughout the first quarter. Both point guards were going at each other in the most entertaining possible way, and the crowd was eating every single moment of it. Indiana kept expanding. Clark set up for a cutting layup, hit 2 free throws of her own late in the quarter, and then buried a massive 29-foot 3 off a Walker Kimbrough assist right at the buzzer to cap off the quarter. The Fever led 29-25 after 1. Clark already had 14 points, and the crowd at Gainbridge Fieldhouse was absolutely alive. The second quarter was where the Wings went on a run that completely changed the game. Bueckers came out of the break on fire. She buried a 25-foot running pull-up 3 to tie it. Then James hit 2 buckets in quick succession off Sims' assists. And then Bueckers came back and buried another 3 to push Dallas ahead by 7. The Fever were suddenly scrambling, and Bueckers was simply unguardable. Indiana called timeout, but couldn't slow the bleeding. Smith hit a 3. Bueckers buried another. Sims added a layup. And the Wings had rattled off 13 straight points to push the lead all the way to 14. The crowd that had been so loud for Clark in the first quarter was stunned into silence. Clark kept fighting, though. She was getting to the foul line over and over again. She went 11 for 13 from the stripe on the night, and she kept manufacturing points even when her shots weren't falling. She hit 2 free throws here, 2 more there, and kept Indiana from completely falling off a cliff in a tough second quarter. But the Wings' lead had grown too big. Bueckers was dominant and looked like the rival for Clark that the Wings were hoping she would be. Indiana went into halftime trailing 61-46, and the Wings had all the momentum. Indiana came out of halftime with renewed purpose. Clark immediately set up Mitchell for a cutting layup, and then came right back and found Mitchell again for another one to cut the deficit to 9. Clark's passing in those moments was surgical. She was operating at a different level than everyone else on the floor in terms of court vision and decision-making. And then everything stopped. With just under 8 minutes left in the third quarter, Alana Smith stepped under Clark as she went up for a 3-pointer, a textbook landing space violation, and Clark came down awkwardly, landing hard directly on her kneecap. She immediately grabbed at her leg and went to the ground, and the entire Gainbridge Fieldhouse fell completely silent. Clark sat on the floor for a moment, clearly in pain, before eventually getting to her feet with some assistance. The crowd gave her a long ovation as she made her way to the bench, where she was evaluated and did not return for the rest of the game. Post-game, Clark said she had just landed hard on her kneecap. You were down, you were rubbing your knee, and then you were limping a little bit. Is it your knee, your ankle? What exactly was bothering you? I just landed on my kneecap really hard. Laughter, and that it was not the groin, which was the injury everyone feared most given her history. Smith was called for a flagrant one on the play, and Clark hit 2 of 3 free throws before coming out. It was a scare that nobody in that building needed to see. And the images of Clark going down were immediately all over social media. The WNBA world collectively held its breath. With Clark out for the remainder of the game, Indiana's supporting cast did their best to hold things together. Walker Kimbrough hit a fadeaway. Traylor added a layup off a Walker Kimbrough assist, and the Fever kept chipping away. But the Wings were simply too good on the night. Buchers and James kept making plays. Dallas extended their lead back out, and Indiana never got close enough to make it a real game in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter belonged to the reserves as both teams emptied their benches. Traylor hit a couple of threes to keep Indiana competitive on the scoreboard. Walker Kimbrough kept making plays, and others contributed from the perimeter. But without Clark on the floor, Indiana never had enough to mount a serious comeback. The Wings cruised to the finish line, James and Buchers making plays down the stretch, and Dallas won comfortably, 95-80. The result didn't particularly matter. The only thing anyone was talking about after the final buzzer was Clark. Clark finished with 21 points in just 16 minutes of action, 4 of 6 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3, and 11 of 13 from the foul line. That is an extraordinarily efficient performance from someone who is still working her way back. And it is a reminder that when she is locked in and healthy, the level she plays at is just different from everyone else in this league. Post-game, Clark addressed the injury directly and told reporters that she had just landed hard on her kneecap and that she was okay. The Fever organization echoed that, saying there was no structural concern. For a fan base and a league that has watched her go down with injury after injury over the last 2 years, that post-game message could not have come fast enough. Buchers was the best player on the floor tonight apart from Clark, and looked every bit like the franchise cornerstone Dallas drafted her to be. She finished with 20 points, multiple threes, and was virtually unguardable in the second quarter. The Fever will see her again in the regular season opener on May 8th. And if Clark is healthy for that one, it is going to be must-see television. Dallas Wings 95, Indiana Fever 80. Clark is okay. Probably should ask Caitlin this, but she said she's fine, like banged her knee or whatever. But is that something you all have to evaluate as far as her being available for Saturday? I mean, we had planned for her to come out about that time anyway. So, it was just extra precaution, I think, getting her out in that moment. But yeah, I mean, the plan was for her to start the third quarter, and then we get her out quickly. And the regular season is right around the corner. Alright, that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know what you thought down below in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the episode if you enjoyed it. And we'll catch you in the next one.